Can't do that.
All right, we are live, and I'm here today with Howard Chan, our city manager. I'm Jay Schenirer, city council member from District 5. Thank you for joining us. Sorry we're a little bit late. We were having some technical problems. Two old guys trying to do it, and it just gets hard sometimes. Again, this is our weekly broadcast, and we try to have someone of interest every week. Howard is our city manager and has been that for a number of years. Let me do a quick recap of last night's city council meeting. We did two very important things last night. One is we passed the West Broadway specific plan. This is a long-term plan done by the city with the redevelopment agency as a partner. That just shows the types of things that we want to do, connecting us to the riverfront, looking at rehabbing a lot of the affordable housing that's there now. There was a lot of misinformation, to be honest, and I think it's important for people to know that no one will be kicked out of their houses, no one will be displaced, but the idea is over the next 10 years or so to be able to rehab close to 800 units of affordable housing. So those will all be there, but we'll be able to do more as well. The second thing we did is we heard a report from the Mayor's Climate Commission, and this was the mayor's with an apostrophe after the first S. Christopher Cabalden from West Sacramento and our own Daryl Steinberg. This committee did a fabulous job mapping out where our city should go to really combat climate change from our point of view. There's a number of actions that we're going to take. I think most important for the city manager is to find someone who can lead the effort within the city, whether it's an internal person or an external person, but someone who can take the reins. Because this isn't just about a program at all. This is an initiative that really will look at how we work as a city and will touch every city department. We're going to come back to that in a little while. But those two things were done by the council. We had a meeting that was about four and a half hours, but a lot of really good conversation and a lot of engagement by all the council members. As we do every week, I'm going to ask Howard to start with a little bit of a bio about himself. Who he is and how he got to where he is today. So Howard, welcome.
Hey, Jay, thanks for inviting me to be a part of this. And you're right, we're still working through some of this technology here in this new age of telecommuting and this shelter in place. But I'm really glad to be here. I will start with just a little background about me. I was born and raised in San Francisco. I'm one of three boys. And I've been working with the city now for, I guess next month will be 18 years. It was an interesting path forward. I was in the private sector in parking and transportation when I was recruited to come to the city as the city's parking manager in 2002. And we've went through several iterations of reorgs, expansions and contractions, leading up to about 8 years ago, when I was asked by then city manager John Schenirer to join his team as an assistant. I served in that role for almost 4 years, I think 3.5 years. And then with his departure, the council, thank you, Jay, asked me to step in as interim as the council went through a recruitment process to fill that position. So during that period of time, I served interim for, I think, about 3 or 4 months. That's when the current mayor, Mayor Steinberg, was elected and took office, and he and I worked together. And shortly thereafter, he asked if, and the council asked if I'd be willing to serve in the permanent role in that capacity. And that's kind of in a nutshell, but I will tell you, it's been a whirlwind. I mean, it'll be 4 years this coming November since I became interim. And it is, it's a lot different than I thought it was. I mean, being in the role as an assistant city manager and working on a whole range of projects throughout the city, I thought I was exposed to a lot of different things because I was. But I remember John Schenirer, as he left, he said to me, yeah, of all the people, you've been working on all the various things in all the different departments, but even you, Howard, it's going to be different when you take the reins here when I leave. And it's true, it's been different, but it's also been very rewarding. And I'm really grateful to the council for giving me the opportunity to serve in this capacity. It's never was in my career plans, but it's one of those things where opportunities just present themselves, and I took advantage of it. One of the things I will end here with is that I've always been of the mind, I share with my team all the time, both in the city manager's office and throughout our organization. I truly believe, and this is something that has been instilled in me by my parents, is that you do a really good job at where you're at and focus on that, and don't worry about too much about the next, 3, 4, 5 years. I mean, that runs contrary to some of my business courses that I've taken where you kind of plot that out. But you do a really good job where you're at. Do the best job you can do, and those efforts will be, recognized and rewarded probably in the longer term. And I'm living proof of that. I've been here, like I said, almost 18 years in a role that I never thought I would be in. So that's kind of where I'm at.
Yeah, I don't think there are many like sixth graders who say, I want to grow up to be a city manager.
In fact, Jay, I didn't, when I was recruited here to the city, I didn't even know what a city manager was.
Right.
The recruiter had to walk me through what that looked like because my entire career was in the private sector. And so it's been a learning experience for sure. It continues to be.
Well, so I think that's a good segue into the first question here is like, what's the most challenging thing for you in your job? I mean, you're running a $1 billion organization, basically, right?
Right. Well, so the transition over the years to this role here, probably the biggest challenge, and something that I think all first-time city managers will tell you, because I talk to a lot of my colleagues across the state and across the country. It's transitioning from being a quote-unquote doer and delivering things and work products to being a manager and a leader for the organization, and being comfortable not being the subject matter expert in all the different things that we do, because we're a full service city, and it'd be virtually impossible to find somebody who's an SME in all those areas. But that's also being comfortable delegating and trusting in your team to carry out the vision of the council. For me, it works because I won't lie, it becomes stressful at times and challenging, balancing all the needs of an organization of our size. But by nature, I'm just a problem solver, and I thrive in that environment. But moreover, and most importantly, you know this about me, Jay, I'm a people person. I love working with our team. I love working with our community. There's nothing like being able to connect with folks at a real level, to have honest conversations, even when we disagree. I think that's vitally important, both internally for our organization, but in terms of building trust with the community on all the things that we do.
Great. So you have an interesting position because you have 9 bosses. You have an activist mayor who, as I said last night, doesn't really give folks a chance to breathe. We have so much that we're trying to do in the city, all good stuff.
Right.
And you have 8 council members, each representing a different segment of the city, and each having their own interests. How do you balance all that out and try to keep everyone happy?
Well, one of the things that I didn't cover in the previous question is that when people come into my office, generally I have meetings all day long, like you do as well. But what's been a little bit of shift for me is that as people come into my office, mostly, I don't want to say all the time, it's an escalation of a conflict of some project or some decision point that could not be worked out at the staff level or with our various stakeholders, and that it's coming to my office for a decision one way or the other. And that's, I gotta be honest, it's a little unnerving at times, because we do so many different things, and there's all these hundreds of decision points that we need to make, and you got to make them, otherwise everything gets stuck at a standstill. So the question about how I balance the 9 different bosses is that I always start from the place that, and I believe this to be true, that elected officials, they get into this gig here because they want to do good in their communities, and they want to make their communities better. And each elected official, they have their own views on how to accomplish that. My job is really to try and reconcile the various approaches and perspectives, and get a consensus from a majority of the council to move forward. And I think what's worked for me, and again, I'm very grateful that I've I believe I've earned the trust of the council, the mayor and the council, is being an honest broker and having these very direct conversations about where the pinch points are and trying to find a path forward. And that, it's like every Tuesday we have our council meetings, and so we get through, like yesterday's. There's a lot of staff work that goes into that council agenda that people aren't aware of, but the projects and the items you talked about, the two big ones, there's a lot of back and forth about how this is brought forward, what the staff's recommendation is, and how that comports with the council. But I think it all comes back to having the conversations about what reality is and where the council as a whole is, and being able to convey that in a way that you all, my bosses, can hear. So I think that's really the balancing act that repeats itself on a cycle every week.
Yeah. Maybe, one last question on that line. Tell me about a typical day or a typical week for you, if there is anything typical about what we're doing now.
Oh boy, yeah, no, there's not really a typical week. There is a,
or maybe however you could talk about the cycle of work that you're doing, because that itself in a way.
Yeah, there's a hum to City Hall once you get into a rhythm here, and we're not like most cities. We're about in the middle of the road here in terms of how often we have council meetings. We are different that we're here at the state capitol, so we take on initiatives and programs that potentially have statewide impact, and other cities look to us to kind of follow our lead. But on a typical Tuesday, we have 30 different items, some on consent, some are on discussion. There's staff reports associated with it, and there's a whole process to getting these various staff reports forward to council, and each one of those requires a lot of staff work and briefings with the council members, so they're aware of what's coming before them, because we're asking for action. But that whole agenda management piece is really a full-time job. I mean, there's just a lot to it. But over and above that, it is trying to focus in on, okay, so what is it that we're doing this week, but how does that play into the council's goals and priorities and vision for the city, and how do we incrementally chip away at that while remaining flexible to the shifting environment and the shifting priorities at times. But a lot of it is, if you looked at, I'm sure like your calendar, Jay, it's just giving people access to work through all the issues that make those agenda items that come forward go as smoothly as possible. And that's not possible at times. So yesterday, like the West Broadway plan, specific plan, you have people who are all over the board on this, and a lot of it was misinformation. Some of it was that, we obviously, we can always do a better job of, communicating what these plans are, but there's a lot of effort that goes in there, and there's just times that we're not going to be able to reach everyone for various reasons. I mean, you heard last night about some of these outreach meetings being held at times that don't work for certain individuals because of work schedules, and so we try and shift those meetings to earlier or later, then you impact another group. But anyway, it's a lot of that type of management. And then in the background, we have a year-round budgeting process, and that is a bear, because you mentioned we got a $1.3 billion budget here, and that sounds like a lot, because it is. There's a lot of it that's already accounted for already that is not discretionary. Things like debt service payments, and the labor component, pensions, and we can spend the whole hour talking just about budget. But those two items are probably the ones that take up the most time. In between, having the larger picture of what our budget looks like, and then the weekly items that come forward, and trying to reconcile those is a lot of what we do. And meanwhile, we have 5,000 employees, and we have recruitments all the time. I mean, there's never a day that goes by that we don't have an active recruitment. And it'll bleed into something else I think we're going to talk about too, is this discussion about diversity within our workforce.
Mhm.
But I mean, those are kind of the big theme things that happen on a very regular basis.
Great. And so what's your typical work week? Do you count the number of hours or?
No, and I don't want to make it sound like, a lot of times people come in my office, they go, oh man, you're busy, I don't want to bother you. The truth is our city and our team, everybody works really hard. They work a lot of hours, everybody's stressed out. And what I say is that we're all equally busy. We're just busy doing different things. But, as you know, I don't, my phone's on 24/7 and because it needs to be, that's the nature of the job. But it is a very, very long week. I don't think I've seen a 40-hour week in the whole time I've been in the manager's office,
Right.
the last 8 years.
Only if you're counting 2 or 3 days.
Yeah. Yes, exactly.
Yeah. And what has maybe surprised you most? I mean, we have let me say something. I want to compliment you on this because the city manager form of government that we have to be successful really requires a positive relationship between the city manager and the mayor, particularly when you have a very activist mayor as Daryl is, as we all know. And I know, and I've seen this on both ways where there was not a good relationship. But I just want to compliment you on how you and the mayor work together, which is so important. That collaborative effort, which I think spills over into the council as well, is the only way that we're going to be successful. But as you've been doing this for a number of years now, I don't know, you kind of said the breadth of issues that you have to tackle every day is pretty enormous. But any huge surprises coming into this? What didn't you expect?
Well, what I didn't expect or anticipate really was the amount of time, to your point about my relationship with the mayor, is how much of that time spent dealing with the mayor and council and helping and supporting where I can. I mean, the discussion about my relationship with the mayor is it's spot on. I mean, without having that direct and honest conversation that he and I have, even when we disagree, because it's a respectful disagreement, but it's also being very honest about what is going on the council and what where his colleagues are, without violating the Brown Act. I'm kind of the go-between with all the council members to try and figure out how best to move an item forward in a cohesive fashion.
No, because of the Brown Act, you're really the only person who gets to talk to everyone.
Right.
So it's an interesting situation.
Yeah.
So you brought this up, and let's go back to it. I think one of the things that the city has been working on really hard over the last year and a half, and is now starting to come to fruition, and will come to the council or law and legislation committee on September 15th, is an initiative around equity and diversity. Could you talk maybe a little bit about that, why that's important, and how you see that playing out?
Yeah, no, I think it's vitally important, and it's the credit of the council asking for a diversity audit about 2 years ago, and what it pointed out is what we all intuitively knew, because Sacramento is no different. I've talked to my colleagues in other cities, and it's that our workforce didn't necessarily reflect diversity in our community, and so as a result of the audit and the follow-up. The council took a leadership role in saying, look, we need to bring somebody on board who is going to, whose full-time job it is to tackle that huge issue and very important issue for our community. And so we hired our first ever diversity and equity manager. And we're looking at all the different things that we could be doing to make those numbers look better, so that when we take a snapshot of where we are now versus when we started this effort, that we will begin to see that shift in recruitments at all levels, in particular at the executive management levels. Initially the work has been focused internally to make sure that we're doing recruitments the right way, making sure that we get the information out about job openings and whatnot. I mentioned to you earlier that we have openings literally every day. One of the commitments I made early on was that when we have these positions that become vacant for whatever reason, that we push that information out to our community and all the various chambers and whatnot, so that they can, because they are the best people to get the information out to their respective communities as well. So we're working on that, and we're shifting now to the discussion at the council level, where that's great. We're making progress. We're seeing our numbers improve all the way around, but it's probably like a 5 to 10 year effort here that we're going to make changes, make an impact as we go, just because it took us forever to get here. So it's going to take a little bit to get us to where we need to be. But the different take on this that the council is advocating for is that we begin to look at equity from the perspective of our budgeting and our investment. What does that look like going forward? How do we create a mechanism by which we engage all these high-level programs, initiatives, and decisions the council makes, looking through an equity lens? And so that is what's going to be coming forward to Law Alleged for a discussion, and also, asking for feedback from the council about what it is that we're going to be measuring. What's that baseline? It's going to be the council that sets that for us. So here's the target we want to hit, and here's how we're going to measure what success looks like. The key to that, and I've mentioned this to the mayor and some others as well, whatever we end up with, we need to be consistent, because if we're not consistent, we're going to lose the trust that we're with the community and even within the organization about why it is that we're taking on this initiative. So I'm looking forward to the conversation. We're going to be able to report out also on all the efforts that we've been taking over the last couple of years, that's culminating in this race and gender equity action plan that I know you've been briefed on too. But this is really, it's good work. It's going to work in parallel to this effort coming forward to the council, and I look forward to the discussion.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it as well. We did get briefed on it. Ami, who is our diversity person, I think did a wonderful job. She spent over a year getting to this point. I think almost a year and a half, I believe.
Right.
And the work that she's done, and I'm involved in the equity discussion in a number of the boards and commissions I'm on, in my own business and in the city. So this is kind of a consistent piece of work, which is incredibly important in all those areas. But I think what she's done is the most comprehensive look at this that I've seen thus far. And I think it will be hard. It will be, I think, uncomfortable for some people when we look at results. But I think it's the most important thing that we could be doing. And again, I don't want it to be marginalized. It's how we do business versus an initiative over here on the side that we're going to do. So
right.
Great. So we have the equity initiative. We've just spent the last 4 months or so figuring out how to spend $89 million in federal money, which I think our staff has done a fabulous job. Next Tuesday, I believe, will be our final meeting on it, where we'll look at the creative economy and the arts, and put out our last $7 million or so. Last night, as I said, when we started, we talked about climate, and there's a full initiative there. Those are just 3 pieces of the puzzle. You talked about our overall work on the budget every year. I want to talk a little bit. We'll come back to COVID and the impact that that's had. But how do you reconcile? I mean, we talked about reconciling your 9 bosses, which is hard enough. But you've got all these multiple initiatives, and they are not singular projects. They are far more ambitious in looking at the way we actually work as an organization, how we engage with our community. How do you do that and not have people say, Howard, it's too much, I'm leaving. I can't work this much.
Were you reading my text messages last night?
I can only imagine. I saw a couple.
No, I think that it all goes back to priority setting by the council. If this, in fact, is a priority for the council, then let's make it a priority. And the way that we're going to be able to reconcile all these efforts that we've undertaken over the years relative to climate, culminating in our climate action plan in the general fund, in the general plan. I think the council hit it just right. and the climate action plan calls for having a a higher level position who can quarterback all these efforts. And so in the interim, what we're going to do is look. We have so many great people that can take the charge and lead this effort. However, they have a day job. And that is the problem. And we've been trying to, through COVID, keep many vacancies open just because we don't know what our financial picture looks like going forward. But having a person who, kind of like me, the same thing. We've had these different efforts on trying to improve our diversity numbers over the years, but it wasn't until the council said this is a priority for us, and therefore staff go forth and conquer, bring someone on board who's going to wake up every day and think about diversity and equity. So the same thing here is somebody who will wake up thinking about climate and all those things that we can do to advance our own efforts to meet the plans that were laid out. And I think that, again, we have people in the organization working on multiple pieces, and it's really going to be my plan. I know that the council wanted 30 to 45 days to come back, but it's to appoint somebody in the interim.
I think 30 days is the favorite phrase of our mayor. Come back in 30 days.
But I appreciate the sense of urgency.
Yeah.
I get that. But it is something that's a challenge if we have, the staff that's qualified to do this work, try and drop what they're working on now, which was a priority previously, to just do this. But we will make it work. It's very similar to this Office of Community Response. Again, another priority for the city and from the city council, that I appointed somebody in interim as we do a search for somebody more permanent. But that way we're not just losing time and not making advances on that effort. So yeah, more to come on that for sure. There were 10 different items that were asked for as part of that motion. So I'm going to have to prioritize which ones we can get back quickly, and then just provide updates on some of the other ones.
Yeah, I mean, my thought process as I was listening to it, and I did talk a little bit about this. I think that step one is hiring this person or moving someone into that position. Step two, to me, is really putting together a work plan where you can look at roles and responsibilities, and you can look at all of the assets that we do have already as a city that go into it, and like our active transportation commission, even our Measure U committee, because of the funding aspects. There's so many pieces to that puzzle and a lot of things that we're doing already. I'm not sure that we do a great job, and this is hard, but I'm not sure that we do a great job involving all the people that should be involved when we do these types of initiatives, and we're missing out on something. We, as a council, I think, appoint great people to our boards and commissions, but we don't interact with them enough. I think that's something that hopefully we want to look at. I want to look at next year as we move forward.
No, I agree wholeheartedly. That's the case. And the good news on this effort here from last night is that we've been convening all the different departments and groups in the mayor's office. Julia Burrows has been point on that piece that talks to all the people dealing with the green initiatives in the city. So we have a framework already in place on how to connect with those individuals in the organization. So we're not starting from scratch.
Good. Let's talk about COVID for a second.
Do we have to?
Just for a minute.
Can we just wish it away?
Just like a miracle, it'll be gone.
Yeah.
I guess I want to talk more about the impact on the city and how that's affected. Obviously, we have many people working from home, working remotely. It's affected our finances, but how do you think about that every day? What's foremost in your mind on that subject?
Yeah, it's been something that nobody can anticipate, and it has just been devastating to not just our organization, but our community. I'm on a weekly call with all the city managers in the region, and everybody is trying to deal with the impacts of COVID on revenue and on, just people coming. For instance, for us, we would have, 100,000 people coming downtown every day. It's like a bowling alley now. You go down during rush hour traffic on I Street and whatnot. But, we at one point early on, we sent a bunch of people home, and we're trying to figure out how we can quickly get people to work remotely for the safety of our our residents and our businesses as well as our employees. It is what a stark difference. I mean, if you just think about pre-COVID, before March, we literally were firing on all cylinders. We had tons of things happening. Golden One was spurring, I think it was the number I remember, I'm sure it was larger, but over $1 billion in new construction as a result of the Golden One Center and DOCO. I mean, that I can't even imagine, the Kings not having a game. I mean, like, that's our reality today. We continue to work through the convention center renovation and expansion. We announced MLS. I mean, that was we partied for a week, I think it was. And I think the mayor partied for like 2. And then we also talked about the Sacramento waterfront, the revitalization. I mean, all those efforts they haven't gone away. They're just put on hold right now because the reality is when COVID hit, it's just devastating. When we brought back to the council what we thought were going to be the financial impacts just early on, they're probably going to be worse. But as you recall, on the TOT was, I think it was
TOT is our hotel tax.
Or hotel tax, sorry,
yeah,
a transient occupancy tax. We're looking at the balance of fiscal year 20, which ended June 30, of taking a hit of over $30 million, and then forecasting for the balance for all of fiscal year 21 about a $60 million hit. And that's granted that we reopened in July. We're planning on like a 30% wrap up in July, and it gradually goes up over the year to get back to where we were pre-COVID. But as you know, we're not even there because we were poised to open up again, and we took another hit. So that has been devastating because all the projects I mentioned have been put on hold, and we've shifted to where we're saying, okay, now we got to make sure that we can continue providing basic services to our residents and businesses. We make sure that there's clean water coming through. There's, when we flush the toilets, they go in the right direction. Roads are paved. People answer the phones when they call 911. We have a reasonable response time in those issues, and so it's been a challenge. I mean, right. Meanwhile, we have employees who are home who are wanting to come back, and we can't let them back in yet. And we're working through a lot of those issues with our employee unions. Going forward, I knock on wood here because at some point we're going to see the locusts start descending on Sacramento and the rest of the country.
Sure seems like it.
Yeah, but we're optimistic that we're doing the things we need to do right now, ready to open back up when the time is right. And we're fortunate. I almost feel bad getting on those weekly calls with the city managers in our region because we're the only city that receives some relief from the federal government, and that's the $89 million you were talking about. Fortunately for us, we're able to push a lot of that money out early, and then more recently, we had the lion's share of the work to get the money out occurring over the last couple council meetings and culminating in the next one to get out probably about $80 million worth of relief to our community, and we have probably less than just about 10% of that 89 million will go to offset some of the services that the city has provided to the community in terms of personal protective equipment, sanitation issues, and within the city and overtime and things like that.
Yeah, I think we've been incredibly thoughtful about how to spend the money. I know it was a balancing act between immediate relief and what I would consider investments, workforce development, helping our businesses. So I would put our work up against any city in the state. And I do want to thank all of our staff who did just a fabulous job across the board on that. So maybe we have time for about 2 more questions here, Howard.
Okay.
First one would be kind of 10 years from now, as you will look back. I assume you will not still be working in the city manager's office at that point, from what you've told me.
My wife would leave me. She would just leave me.
Right. Hers and mine together would go. But what do you want to look back and what will you be most proud of at that point?
Well, somebody else has asked me this question once before, and I give a lot of thought. And the inclination, and I hear from some of my colleagues, is that you think about all the great projects you were involved with. I mentioned some of them earlier in this broadcast here, and I think those will be cool. That I could walk down, J Street with my son and my daughter and my wife, and just, hey, your dad was involved in this, and that was all cool stuff. But those are fine. But if I'm honest, when I look back, if I want to be remembered as just someone who's kind of made a difference, someone who was trusted and respected to carry out the council's vision on what they want for the city, and probably most importantly, someone who's helped the employees within our organization grow professionally and provide some opportunities for them for upward mobility, whether it's here or in another city, because I've been so fortunate and blessed. I've been afforded this opportunity to serve as the city manager for the capital city of California. And that is just amazing. And I still, it'll be 4 years here soon. It still feels very fresh to me. And so, I really, I hope I can do the same for others.
No, that's great. So the last question, which I told you about before, which we ask everyone, and I don't want to get you into trouble here, but if we were to switch places, it takes, for those who don't know, it takes 5 votes on the city council to move an item. So if you were me sitting on the council and you knew you had 4 other votes, which you would never know that because of the Brown Act, so I don't want to get anybody into trouble. But if you knew you had 4 other votes and you could do one thing, what would it be?
If I get in trouble, I'm blaming you, Jay.
No problem. No problem.
Well, and this is something that I have mentioned before, as I would have our council, if I were sitting on the council with 4 votes in my pocket, to focus on more strategic planning and priority setting with the council. I mean, the reality is that if we have 19 different priorities, all great priorities, we really don't have any. And we're trying to do a lot of good for our city, but we need to focus our efforts if we're going to be successful. And I think I heard a little bit of that at the council recently about, focusing on 2 or 3 different themes. I mean, obviously all the things that we do day in, day out, core services, those are a priority as well, but those are just day in, day out. I mean, if we're looking at strategic priorities, 3 or 4 of them, then we can align the organization's efforts behind it. Because if we don't, people are going to be disappointed. The work is not going to be as thorough because we're having the same 15 people working on 50 different projects, and there's frustration with timeliness of delivery, thoroughness of the work product. I just really think that is absolutely what I would focus on.
No, I think that's a great point, and I know we'll have at least 2 new members of the council this winter and moving forward, and so maybe there's an opportunity to do that. We'll have to talk to the mayor about it.
Yeah.
But look, I really want to thank you for your time today. I think this has been great. Appreciate your honesty and all the answers that you've given, and I wish us all luck coming out of COVID, coming out of the fires. Hopefully, no locusts for quite a while here. We have a great city and we have great people, and I know you do a wonderful job as a leader. Everyone reports to you within the city, and that's an important thing for people to know as we go forward. And I think you've done a great job and continue to do so. So thanks very much.
Thank you, Jay. Thanks for inviting me.
All right. Take care, everyone. Stay safe.
All right. Bye-bye.